In a class, while a student is trying to study, others are bullying another student. The leader of the bullies tells his mate to bring the guy they are bullying to a store later, and they ask him why he said that. The leader explains that they should get money from him, as although his parents are poor, the poorer the family is, the more their parents want to treasure and spoil their kids. He says no harm will also come to them since the guy's parent has no power. As the leader continues to boast to his mates on how he will make money from the guy, the student who has been studying stands in front of him and stabs him in the eye with his pen. The student is called to the teacher's lounge where a teacher expresses his disbelief for his behavior. He asks why he stabbed his fellow student, even though he was not the student being bullied. The student keeps quiet, but at the teacher's insistence, he says they were being loud. The teacher does not understand him, and the student, whose name is Kang Pildu, repeat that the students were being loud and that is why he stabbed him. The news spreads at school that Kang Pildu stabbed a student who was loud when he was trying to study. They say he must be a psychopath, and they start calling him Psychopath Kang Pildu. Pildu's mantra is that he does not care what they call him, and he doesn't care what method he uses, but if there is something he wants, he will get it no matter what. Pildu is now a prosecutor and his assistant informs him of his meeting, where he talks about the Manhwa group. He explains that it is a new company that runs a loan business, but they are branching to other sectors, and they took in 500 billion in just profits the previous year. He further explains that the Manhwa group looks fine on the outside, but that is not the case as they are no ordinary company. He says they have absorbed the nation's gangs to expand their influence and power, and the problem is that, as they grow in size, the number of crimes they commit also rises. Pildu says the group regularly blackmails and physically assaults those who are in the way of their business, and they do not hesitate to murder either. Pildu then drops the bombshell that the group can carry out all those activities because the person supporting them is the National Assembly member, Kang Ildo, who is the group's owner. The others are shocked at Pildu's words as Kang Ildo is one of the presidential candidates. The leader of the group dismisses the meeting and tells Pildu to wait behind. As the others leave the room, he asks Pildu why he has an obsession with the case. Pildu replies that he is not obsessed as it is only his job to investigate if a crime is being committed. Pildu seems to have had this same conversation with his mother as she tries to stop him from investigating the Manhwa group, but he refuses despite her pleas. The leader points out that if things go wrong, the entire public prosecutor's office might start on the wrong foot with the future president, so Pildu should just stop pursuing the issue. His phone rings at that moment, and Pildu moves to leave the room, but the leader stops him asking if he has heard the news that his mother has passed away. At the memorial service of Pildu's mother, some men are seen removing the flowers and clearing the place. They talk about how no one came there at all and it all seems to be a waste of time. Pildu arrives at this moment and stands staring at the photo of his mom they threw on the ground. The men tell him to leave, but he ignores them and says he wants to know how she died. Pildu had previously gone to the coroner who told him the higher-ups had interfered with the case and he could not get anything from the autopsy report. Pildu's mother's death was ruled as a suicide, but the coroner does not think it is true. Pildu tells the men they did a really messy job on his mom, and he is sure she could not even scream with what they did to her as they must have stabbed her without a break. As he continues to talk, one of the men asks him why he is interfering when he does not have a warrant. He touches Pildu telling him to leave, but Pildu breaks his hand and kicks him to the ground. Another man attacks him saying he has made a mistake, but Pildu also easily beats him up and says he is no longer doing things with the law but in his own way, and anyone who gets in his way is dead. At the Manhwa group company, Kang Tigu, who is the third son of Kang Ildo, tells his brothers that Pildu messed up everyone at the funeral. He asks if they will do to him, and Kang Mu, the second son, looks at his elder brother and says it would not be good for the presidential election, and asks if they should do something before the issue gets worse. Kang Chawuk, the first son, says they shouldn't just sit back and watch. He then turns to their father and asks what they should do to Pildu. Ildo replies that it is no different for his child and they should kill Pildu as they would do for anyone who gets in their way. It turns out that Pildu is the fourth son of Ildo. Three men who are friends are talking about treating themselves to a meal when Pildu passes by. They recognize him as the guy who stabbed a bully in the eye with his pen as they went to the same school together. They wonder why he is in such a shabby area, and they talk about the nickname he was given then. One of the men stares at Pildu, remembering an issue that occurred when they were still in school. In a flashback, he was being bullied by a group of students who threatened to shove cigarettes down his throat. A teacher arrives and stops the student. The leader of the bullies says he just wants to borrow the guy's clothes for pee. Despite seeing the guy's bleeding nose, the teacher, who seems scared of the bullies, leaves and tells them to prepare for their next class. The bullies make fun of the teacher, and they continue to taunt the guy. The leader then stomps on his eyeglasses before leaving. The guy feels dejected as he sits on the floor, holding up his eyeglasses to see if it is still functioning. Pildu arrives at this moment and tells him to move out of the way as he wants to throw away some trash. The guy asks what the point is in throwing away trash when the trash that needs to be cleared remains. He then brings out a box cutter, reasoning that he chose death because of the bullies. He tries to slash his wrist, but Pildu stops him, saying no one will know even if he does that. He then says he will clear the trash for him since he is on cleaning duty. As the students talk about Pildu stabbing the bully with a pen, the man watches him, reasoning that he truly took care of the trash for him without blinking an eye. He wonders if it was just because of him. Back to the presents, the man ponders that he should tell his friends about his involvement with Pildu, but he doesn't because he is scared of him. Pildu enters the building and goes up to his room. As he enters the room, he is quick to notice that someone else is in the building, and he uses his hand to hold the knife the man wants to stab him with. He tells the man to try taking off his shoes the next time he enters someone else's house uninvited. He smashes the man to the ground and asks who sent him. Another man arrives holding a knife. He also attacks Pildu, who kills him easily. Pildu enters his apartment further to meet another man drinking from his fridge. The man asks if Pildu is really a prosecutor, as he is going to settle for cheap, thinking he would be able to kill him quickly. As the man inspects his dead comrade, Pildu notices a lady who is almost unconscious, and he asks about her. The man he brought her from the floor below. He explains that he had to make an alibi to make Pildu seem like a junky, corrupt prosecutor attempting to violate a neighbor. Pildu tells the man that he lacks creativity, as that would not be enough to smear his name. He says the man will have to kill the girl's parents to gather more attention. At the Manhwa group company, a man tells Kang Ildo that the man they hired to kill Pildu will handle the task as long as he is paid right, and Ildo has to take care of the mess he left. He slyly taunts Ildo, saying he is sure he knows about how things go around and that one word is enough to bury him alive. He then tries to show support, saying a son becoming a prosecutor should pay solid support to his father. He tells Ildo that if things go around, he will not be able to avoid taking responsibility, as the higher-ups won't just watch anymore, and he taunts again that since he climbed that high from rock bottom, he'll know better than anyone what would happen in the end. Ildo, who has been ignoring the man, turns at that word. The man quickly says he wishes Ildo the best, so he should not take things personally. But with the presidential elections around the corner, things need to be wrapped up quickly so he can bury what he did in the past. Ildo moves towards the man, and with a smirk, he says they will have to dig the whole of South Korea to bury it. The man berates him for making a joke, but Ildo ascertains that he is not joking. Ildo then asks the man if he should teach him how he survived at rock bottom. He then continues without waiting for a reply that he never spares anyone who gets in his way, with no exceptions, not even family. The man's eyes widen in fear as Ildo moves close to him, saying Pildu is not someone he can handle, so he should not get in his way or he will bury him alive. With a shaky voice, the man says he was only trying to help, but it seems he has stepped out of line. He says he will call off the man he hired to kill Pildu, but as he calls the man, Pildu picks the call as the man is unconscious. Pildu asks to speak with his father, and Ildo collects the phone and says Pildu is not smart despite being a prosecutor. But he should have learned to read the room, as he should have given him the position of prosecutor general. He asks Pildu if he killed all those men at the funeral just because of the death of his mother, and Pildu replies that he does not understand what his mother's death meant to him. He explains that the only reason he was able to withstand was because his mother played the role of his safety pin and someone took that away from him. Meanwhile, Pildu had tied the man down in his apartment. He leaked the gas pipe and left the apartment while calling his father. Now, the gas catches fire, and as the apartment blows up, he tells his father that he will kill everyone involved in his mother's death, with no exceptions, and not even family. Ildo smiles at these words, saying Pildu is finally starting to act more like his child. The lady who was in Pildu's apartment is wheeled out to be taken to the hospital. Her mother quickly rushes to her side, asking the medical attendants if she is okay. They tell her she doesn't have to be worried as the person who reported the incident performed first aid on her. The police arrives and asked her questions about the incident. She recounts what she saw and remembers that the man who came in last had red eyes. At a bar, Tigu tells his men that they have to make use of the opportunity that Pildu has created for them. He says he was not planning on doing anything before the elections, but things have changed and even his older brothers are walking on eggshells, so their father must be so frustrated. He says they will pull Pildu down and it is time their father finds out who has been pulling the weight for them to make it that far. One of the men asks if they should wait till after the elections and Ildo might be annoyed if they do something flashy. But Tigu says that sloth-like attitude is why they are in their current situation. He points out that his brothers are each getting affiliate companies just because they were born before him and he cannot keep doing their dirty work his whole life. He says the only way they can advance to the headquarters is by using Pildu. Pildu receives a CCTV footage showing his mother entering a house in a shabby area shortly before her death, and he goes to the location wondering why she went to such a place. At the location, Pildu finds a place to hide and watches some men drag a man into the building. Inside the building, they strip the man to his underwear and he begs them to save him. The boss reminds him that he was not forced to loan money, and he brings out a document the man signed which says if he fails to pay the interest, he will pay the full amount including the principal with his organs. A dog in the room barks wildly as the man says paying with his organs means death, and he continues to beg that they should give him more time to pay. The boss turns to the dog who is still barking wildly and smacks it with a baseball bat. The man watches in fear as the boss turns back to him saying he could not hear him due to the dog barking. The man shakingly says he needs more time and the boss raises the bat to hit him. But Pildu enters at that moment, distracting the boss. The men notice Pildu and ask what he's doing there. Instead of giving a clear answer, Pildu casually walks around and tells them to ignore him, saying he's just there to check on something. They assume he's a customer and ask him to leave, promising to call him when they're finished with their business. Pildu calmly reminds them that he'll leave once he's done. The boss, getting curious, asks Pildu what he really wants. Pildu responds that he wants to check the CCTV footage, which shocks the men as they realize he's not a customer after all. They laugh at his boldness, but the boss quickly warns that checking the CCTV won't come for free. He adds that Pildu's arrival is convenient since their current goods aren't enough, and suggests that Pildu should give him one of his eyes in exchange for access to the CCTV. Suddenly, one of the men tries to attack Pildu from behind with a hammer, but Pildu dodges the blow and kicks the attacker. He turns to the rest of the group and, with a cold tone, says that he knew they wouldn't listen if he was polite, but he only needs one of them to stay alive. The men rush at Pildu, but he swiftly kills the boss and two others, leaving just two men standing. He looks at the remaining pair and reminds them that only one of them needs to survive, then asks which one will talk. One man, trembling with fear, says they'd be killed if they reveal any customer information, and tries to offer Pildu money instead. Pildu, unimpressed, hits him with a bat, killing him. Finally, he turns to the last man, who, terrified, immediately points to a room and says the CCTV is in there. Pildu steps into the room and immediately notices lots of tubes filled with eyes. As he walks deeper into the room, he sees a man painting an eye. Pildu then mentions that he heard the CCTV footage is supposed to be in this room. The man turns around to face him, and Pildu comments that the room is full of prosthetic eyes, admitting he doesn't really know what this place is. Since he's in a hurry, he just wants a copy of the CCTV footage. The man responds, saying that Pildu's rude attitude hasn't changed and suggests that Pildu should at least greet him. Pildu just stares at the man, and the man is surprised that Pildu doesn't remember him. It turns out the man is the same student Pildu stabbed in the eye when they were in high school. In a dark alley, a man hands over some goods to another man, who notices there's more than he expected. The first man explains that there was a situation at the site, and a group of people barged in, demanding an eye. They start talking about the guy who works for them, mentioning how he's obsessed with collecting eyes and always keeps one for himself. The first man then shares that when the group tried to mess with this guy, he pulled out their eyes without using any anesthesia. The second man wonders how long this guy plans on doing things like that. And the first man replies that it might not be for much longer because he heard that the person who stabbed the guy in the eye is about to visit the site. Back at the site, the one-eyed guy tells Pildu to stop looking so clueless and to act like he's happy to see him. Pildu, uninterested in small talk, tells the guy to shut up and just give him the CCTV footage. The guy starts talking about how Pildu has always been stubborn about getting what he wants, which is why he earned a nickname back in school. Pildu interrupts him, calling him a one-eyed retard, and asks if he even knows who he's talking to. The man is shocked and angrily yells that he's the one Pildu stabbed in the eye for being noisy back in school. Seeing Pildu's blank expression, the man gets furious and lunges at him with a scalpel. Pildu dodges the attack but can't manage to fight back right away. After a brief struggle, the scalpel grazes Pildu's face, leaving him stunned. The man smugly boasts that the scalpel is so sharp that Pildu didn't even realize he'd been cut. He asks if Pildu has now remembered him, but Pildu says he is not interested in useless people, so it may be that he doesn't just want to remember him. The man attacks again, saying he will make sure Pildu remembers him for the rest of his life. He stabs Pildu with the scalpel and says he has waited a long time to do that. As he keeps drilling the scalpel into Pildu's wound, Pildu hits him with his head and he falls bleeding. He then says he now remembers him, and he should have taken out both his eyes back then. The man attacks again, and they start fighting. After a while, the scalpel falls from his hand and Pildu almost punches him. But he notices the monitor showing the CCTV footage and he goes to check it out. He tells the man he will check that out first before deciding what to do with him. And this makes the man mad that Pildu plans to ignore him to the very end. Pildu watches the footage and sees his mom kneeling before the man and begging him. He asks the man why was his mom begging him, but the man switches off the lights in the room and says Pildu must be curious to know why his mom would kneel in front of him. Pildu tries to adjust his sight to see in the dark, but it is too late as the man stabs him with the scalpel again. Now in pain, Pildu removes the scalpel and throws it away. The man then explains that Pildu's mom came to the site and said she heard there were goods that she needed, and she promised to pay a good price. The man tells Pildu that he could not let such a big fish get out of his hands, so when she gave him a list of what she wanted and asked if it is possible to get them, he told her he will make it work. He says he asked if the compensation does not have to be money as he wants something different, and she promised to give him anything he asks for as long as he gets her what she wants. As Pildu holds onto his injured arm, the man is wearing night vision goggles, and he says the Manhwa group madam said she would give him anything, so he had to do his best and get her what she wanted, which is a middle-aged woman with white skin, long, straight hair, and red eye. He holds two scalpels, and he asks Pildu if he is getting a hunch of what his mother was desperately looking for. As Pildu tries to talk, he throws a scalpel at him and says his mother was anxiously looking for someone identical to her and also a corpse. This makes Pildu realize that his mother needed a corpse to die in her place. After succeeding in stabbing Pildu with the scalpel multiple times, the one-eyed man taunts him that it must have been a shock for him to find out that his mother went around looking for a body, as his confidence from earlier is nowhere to be found. He says Pildu can still beg for him to spare him. Pildu ignores him, and he asks why he does not want to beg as his mom was really good at it. He continues the story and says he changed the reward and told his mother that he would find the body for her if she gave him her son's eyes in return. He taunts Pildu by saying he should have seen the look on his mother's face and the way she spent all day on her knees begging him. He says Pildu's mom never agreed to give up his eyes, but he was not about to give up, and that is when someone came to see him and promised that they would let him see Pildu if he gave them his mom. The one-eyed man seems to be tired of the emotional family talks and says they should continue their earlier conversation. He picks up a hammer and walks towards Pildu, who suddenly straightens up. The man thinks Pildu has given up and says he will take good care of Pildu. Thinking Pildu still cannot see him, he swings his hammer to hit Pildu. But Pildu avoids the hammer and in a swift move, he removes the goggles from the man's face. The man calls Pildu an idiot for thinking he has an edge because they are both fighting in the dark. He turns around trying to locate Pildu, but the room is pitch black and he cannot see anything. He tells Pildu to step out and fight, but Pildu only asks him if he cannot see him. Pildu turns on the light and says the scalpels are so sharp that he cannot even tell that his eye has been cut off. The man then realizes that he has lost both eyes. He cries out in anguish and holds onto Pildu's clothes. He says they should do things as planned, and if he takes Pildu's eyes out, he will implant them on him, and he will be able to see again. Pildu slaps him, and he falls to the ground, bursting his eardrums. He says they still need to talk, and he should be able to listen to his remaining ear. And he asks him who are the guys that came to ask for his mom. After a while, Tigu and his goons enter the building and see the man in his pool of blood and muttering words they cannot hear. Tigu slashes him with his sword to kill him, and one of his men says they should go look for Pildu, but Tigu stops them. He looks at the camera in the room and reasons that Pildu has probably seen who else was there apart from their mother. And he tells his men that he is sure Pildu will find his way. A few months ago, at the Manhwa Group headquarters, Tigu alights from his car at the entrance of the company to attend a meeting. The security men bow to him, and he tells them to stop frowning as it makes him feel like he is walking into a funeral. As he tries to enter, one of the security men stops him and says he cannot enter. Tigu angrily asks if he looks like a pushover just because he made a joke. And with a straight face, the security explains that they received orders that the meeting can only be attended by designated members. Tigu points out that he is Manhwa Group's third son, and the security says he is aware of that, but Tigu still cannot attend the meeting. This makes Tigu furious, and he shows them the knife in his pocket, saying they must have forgotten what his personality is like. The security men break out in sweat, but they still stand their ground that Tigu cannot enter the building. He asks them who is blocking him from entering the building, and Kang Mu arrives at this point and says he is the one who gave them the orders. Mu says Tigu still has not gotten rid of his old habits, and he cannot look positively on him when he brings out a knife whenever things do not go his way. Mu berates Tigu that he should be embarrassed by himself and says if he wants to fight with a knife, he should do that at his job, not at the head office. This makes Tigu angrier, and he points out that he is a president on the list of board members, but Mu says not all presidents are the same and Tigu is the president of a subcontractor. Kang Mu moves to enter the building while saying Tigu's behavior is one of the reasons the company is a mess. He then tells the security men to do their job properly. Tigu says Mu is just lucky to get the position he is in because he was born a minute earlier, and Mu turns back asking if Tigu lost his fear receptors. Mu loosens his clothes and says it has been a while since Tigu got hit, so they should fight to see who is on top. Tigu agrees that they should fight, and they are about to get at it, but Kang Chawuk arrives at that moment and stops them. Chawuk walks past them to enter the building, and he tells Tigu to stay unnoticed, do what he is told, and not try to obtain his brother's position if he wants to stick to the group. Tigu reluctantly bows his head to show respect to Chawuk. He reasons that they are saying he should deal with the mess they create for the rest of his life, and he wonders if they really think he will just decide to rot in their shadows for the rest of his life. He stares at the building and determines to show them who the proper person is for Manhwa's next term owner. At Tigu's office, his assistant gives him some documents on Manhwa's illegal businesses. He goes through the documents, and he is shocked at what his brothers have done. The assistant assures him that he can trust the information as it was obtained by Chinese hackers who are famous for their expertise in that area. He then asks if Tigu will be okay, as if the issue explodes they might be in danger. Tigu asks if he also does not believe in him, but the man points out that would not follow him if he did not believe in him, and Tigu tells him to carefully deliver the documents to Pildu. As they leave the office, the assistant asks why Tigu wants to give the documents to his younger brother, as the prosecutor's office is already filled with Kang Il-do's connection, and there is no guarantee that Pildu will decide to investigate his family. As Tigu does not reply to him, the assistant asks if they should look for someone else. Tigu then says he cannot trust other prosecutors because of his father, but with Pildu's personality, as long as he is aware of the illegal businesses, he will definitely begin investigation. Tigu says Pildu does not care about family, and they are only passing the knife handle to Pildu, who will dance a beautiful knife dance for them. And after that, they will capture Manhwa. Back to the present, Pildu is at a hospital recuperating from the injuries he got while fighting the one-eyed man. He thinks back to the man's words that some people have promised him that they would let him see Pildu if he gave them his mom. Pildu picks up his phone and wonders how far the involvement goes with his family. Kang Mu is exiting the Manhwa Group building when he notices his driver sleeping by the car. He hits the man and he falls to the ground. While other workers watch in fear, Mu repeatedly stomps on him, asking how he can be sleeping on the job after continuously receiving his pay. Mu's assistant, Choi Chung-sun, holds him to stop him and calls him Kang Mu. He says it is enough as there are a lot of people around, but Mu slaps him and says they are at the company, so he should watch what he calls him, and they no longer high school friends. Mu says it is due to Chung-sun's idle work that the underlings are in their current state, and Chung-sun apologizes. Mu continues his rant saying if Chung-sun acts that way again, his head will be cut off. Mu's phone rings and he picks up the call, but the person who called does not say anything, and he angrily asks who the person is. It turns out to be Pildu, as he remembers that when he was going through the CCTV footage, he saw Mu entering the building. Mu, who is still waiting for a response, asks if it is Pildu. Pildu then replies that it has been a while since he heard from Mu.